Hi everyone, welcome to Daisy's Dolls. Today I am bringing you another model horse customizing video. However, this one is a little bit more special as it's going to be a portrait of a real-life horse. A Norwegian hobby friend of mine has this lovely white dun Fjord horse called Monja, and she's just adorable and I really wanted to make a portrait of her, so that's what we're going to do today. Alright, let the customizing commence. Jumping right in, I'm using the Collecta Fjord Stallion as a base, and I got my dad to help me saw off the head and neck. Now that we got that out of the way, I'm going to start shaving down the pointy parts around the base of the neck and the head. The original model's neck was quite high, so I needed to shave off quite a lot around the withers to accommodate for the new neck pose I'll be giving her. I'm gonna quickly clean this off my desk, and kinda looks like coconut flakes. Well, actually, we're not done. She has very prominent text on her belly, so I'm going to shave that away with a knife. Also, Monja happens to be a mare, and this model is certainly not, so sorry about that, dude. Eventually it got pretty hard to reach with the knife, so I had to turn to my wire cutters, which just looks so much worse. Before I connect her head and body again, I actually want to make some face modifications this time. Using my favorite epoxy sculpt clay as usual, I'm going to mix equal parts of A and B. And I'm going to be giving her new eyelids to make her look a little bit more sleepy. As usual, I have loads of reference pictures pulled up on my computer off screen, and I look at them a lot while sculpting. And this is how the eyes turned out. I actually think I achieved what I wanted, which is great. I also decided I wanted her tongue to stick out just to up the cute factor a little bit more, so I start by resculpting her muzzle a little bit to make the bleb more believable. Then I stick on the tongue, and I'm not bothering with any wire armature or anything because it is very small and she's not gaping or anything. And this is how that turned out, and oh my goodness, I am in love with her expression. Epoxy cures faster when it's warm, so I left her decapitated head over my wall heater like this, and just hope no one happened to walk into my room. Now that her face mods are done, I'm going to get out the drill and connect her head and body again. As usual, I drill 2 holes in both the body and the head. Then I take some thick florist wire I just happen to have on hand and stick that into both of the holes. Then I attach the head as well. Then I bend the wire into the position I want for her neck. To make sure the wire stays in place, I'm using some 2-part epoxy glue. I store it inside this glove so it doesn't spill onto my other materials, but it seems to have glued itself onto the glove. Oops. I spent a good minute just trying to get the glue out. It had really stiffened in there. Ah, there we go. I thoroughly mix it up, then apply it to the wire. Then while the glue is still wet, I'm going to take some aluminum foil and wrap the neck in that to flesh it out. I'm taking a small amount of epoxy sculpt and just putting that around the base of the neck and the head just to stabilize it even more. I also use epoxy to conceal the cut part of her belly. It's usually very helpful to use water to smooth out the clay and create a seamless transition in between plastic and epoxy. Alright, now that her belly is smoothed out, it's time to sculpt the neck. I start by rolling out epoxy in thick snakes and placing them where the more protruding muscles usually are. Now, I would be lying if I said that I find sculpting necks easy. It is not at all, and I feel like I'm learning something new every time I do it, but I take care to really study some reference pictures and really pay attention to where the muscles are and how they work, and it's really a matter of trial and error, unfortunately. If you'd like to learn more about sculpting, painting, and maybe tack making as well, there's actually a really helpful website with a bunch of different links to different tutorials, and I can link that down below for you guys, and I would definitely recommend you check that out. Using a paintbrush dipped in water is also a great way to smooth down the epoxy. I go ahead and sculpt on her mare parts as well. At this point, I was looking at her and I was quite pleased with her neck sculpting. However, something was off. I have to face it, the neck is too long. I really didn't want to have to do this, but I knew in order for me to be happy with her, I had to shorten the neck just a smidge. So I went ahead and broke it off. And then I started to shave off the epoxy around the wire. Okay, I think that looks better. I go ahead and use Loctite superglue this time to glue the wire in place. Then back to Sculpting Town I go. Now that I'm pretty much done with the right side, it's time to make the left side match. When I'm done with the neck, I let it cure for 24 hours, then I get out the sandpaper and smooth out any bumps or lumps. Now she's looking pretty smooth, although I'm going to spray her with some primer to pick out any imperfections I might have missed. I give her a quick rinse in water just to remove any dust. I dry her thoroughly with a rag. Then, while standing in a ventilated area wearing the necessary safety gear, I give her a layer of primer. Even at this point, I just love her. She's so cute. I think some feathers would suit her nicely, so I sculpt some on with epoxy. And this is how they turned out. I gotta be honest, I'm really not the best at sculpting hair in general, but I tried my best and think they're a little stiff, but they're alright. While we're at the topic of fluffy fjords, I guess I could slap on a little chin beard as well. Aw, that's cute. Well, I might as well go all out, so I sculpted some fluff in her ears as well. After that, I sanded her a little bit more and then gave her another layer of primer. Aww, look at that face. I think she looks adorable overall. I suddenly really wanted to play Star Stable, so I took a quick break to do some gaming, but I got bored of it pretty quickly, so then I got back to work. Alright, so her body modifications are officially done and looking pretty seamless. So now it's time for that signature mane. I got out the epoxy, mixed up equal parts of A and B, but then I remembered that I randomly put glue on the lid and then I peeled it off and it was just really satisfying. Yeah, I don't know why I did that, but I don't regret it. Alright, anyways, I roll out a snake of epoxy that is around the length of my horse's neck, and I make it taper on either end. Then I start to create the hair texture using a thick needle as well as water to smooth it out. I actually use a toothbrush to add texture to the top of standing manes, and I also like to add some splits in the mane with a blade. And this is how it turned out. Well, after looking at it for a while, I realized that it doesn't have that iconic bow that a Fjord's mane usually has, so it seems really awful to cut away all your hard work. However, I realized that redoing things that you aren't happy with usually pays off, so I think it's worth it. Alright, let's try this again. The only thing I'm doing differently this time is making the snake of epoxy bigger and more dramatically bowed. Alright, now her sculpting is officially done and cured, so it's time for paint. The color I used is mostly white, mixed with a tiny bit of black and brown to make it a little bit off-white and more natural. To prevent dust from settling on her while the paint is still wet, I place a clean plastic box on top of her. To prevent the acrylic paint from getting globby and thick, and also to prevent brush strokes, I like to do many watered down layers as opposed to one thick layer. Once you have built up opacity and the acrylic paint is completely dry, I'm going to spray my horse with a sealant. Here I am using Liquitex matte varnish, but I do not recommend it. I recently picked up a Mr. Super Clear sealant, and that one is so much better and it is not yellow, so I'd recommend you use that instead. Now that her base color is established and the sealant has given us a smooth surface to work on, it's time for soft pastels. I use sets of 12 earth tones as well as 12 gray tones. But before we start, it's important to put safety first and wear a dust mask. To make the pastel sticks into a dust, I'm using a fine mesh to grind them up. The pony is dry and ready, and now that she's a uniform color, you can really see her sculpting. Anyways, I start applying the pastels to her using a soft but dense makeup brush. I try to softly define her muscles and details, as well as darkening the ears, legs, and face. Alright, major mistake number 3 apparently. My pastel mix was too dark, and she turned out kind of dirty and grainy looking, and I really don't like that. Well, going by my own narrative, I realized that redoing things that you aren't happy with usually pays off, so let's go ahead. I sprayed the bad layer of pastel with sealant, then I painted over that with the off-white color. I don't recommend doing it this way as it can cause the model to get a little bit sticky, and we will see that down the line, but this time it was the best option. I'm going with more white in the pastel color and making sure to not be too heavy-handed. I add some slightly darker shades to the joints on the legs. When you're done with a pastel layer, make sure to brush off any excess pastel dust before you seal. After spraying the model with sealant, I'm going to darken my pastel mix just a smidge and then get to working with shading her even more. Now I am done with pastels, so I'm going to give her another layer of sealant. Now it's time for acrylic paint. I start painting her mane in a off-white color and accent it with a darker brown. I usually use these walnut box lids as paint palettes, then I place another one on top of it and it prevents the paints from drying out. I also paint her little tongue in a blush pink color. Here you can see the problem of painting several layers of acrylic over top of the sealant. It makes the model a little bit sticky, and thus some dust is sticking to her, which is very obvious because she's a light color, and that kind of sucks. Using a striping brush, I carefully paint on the dorsal stripe. Even though I held my breath and tried to go slow and steady, I kind of failed. But I fixed it up a bit later and it turned out decent. I mix up a light gray color and paint the hooves. I mainly paint her tail in a chocolatey brown color, then mix in white at the top. I spent a lot of time blending the paint, and I'm really happy with the result. Alright, now I'm done with the acrylics, so I'm going to give her a final spray of my sealant. Since it's pollen season, I only let her dry for a couple minutes outside, then gently pick her up and bring her inside. I'm going to use this Fimo gloss varnish to add gloss to her hooves, as well as her eyes, you just can't see it because my hand is in the way, and her tongue. And finally, this cute Fjord mare is finished. This custom was quite a handful if I'm honest, and I think that is a little bit evident. The paint is quite thick, so it hides some of her details, and also the dust on her back that's bothering me a lot. But overall, I think her general expression is adorable, and I do think I succeeded in creating a portrait of Monja. And the real horse owner of Monja also really liked her, so I'm happy about that. Also, I think these purple flowers in the background fit her so well. Maybe I should make her a lilac tag set sometime. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed following along the process of making Monja. Also, stay tuned on my channel. I have several really exciting video projects planned. So yeah, thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Bye!